understanding the concept of cloud is very essential. Okay. Now, let's say, for example, you have a computer, right? And you recently just built a very interesting application, right, on your computer. Now, your computer is sitting down on your computer, obviously. Now, let's call this my personal project, or my personal bookstore. Okay. Now, this is your personal bookstore. Then let's assume you want to share your personal bookstore with a friend of yours, right? My personal bookstore, let's also assume that's the name of your website. Okay. If you would like to share this with your friend, and naturally you're going to have a website name, you're going to have all those beautiful stuff, right? Now, this is one thing that is interesting. That is, you're going to give your friend the name of the site, and then your friend can easily just access your website or the images or the project using this. Now, where is this hosted? It's hosted on your computer, right? Now, what is interesting is, what if tomorrow your computer dies? If your computer dies, you need to figure out a way to send this. You need to find a way to make sure your friend, which in this case actor, now let's call this actor James. How would James be able to access this information or the file, interesting file that we have here? Now, in order to prevent this sort of issues, you need to find a way to host your file, your interesting file. Now, that is where cloud comes in. Now, what is cloud? Cloud is basically a bunch of servers that you can purchase and that you can have access to online. That is the layman terms. And there are different kind of cloud providers. And these cloud providers, they are just companies that offers compute resources. Now, you might be like, what is compute resources? Compute resources simply means your device, a server. A server, we can call it a computer. If you like to get a computer, if you have a computer, you can turn the computer to a server. And the computer, if you like to log into the computer, let's say, for example, you went to Amazon.com, right? On Amazon.com, you bought a laptop. The laptop, you're able to host your interesting project on the laptop, right? Now you give James access to the project. Now let's assume we have a lot of James that are interested in your interesting project. You have a lot of James who are interested in this project. It will get to a point where all these people, the more they are trying to access your computer, the number of traffic that is coming into your computer, and your computer will start, it's going to be overworking, right? And you need to buy more storage. You need to buy more resources such as the memory of your computer, or the amount of space on your computer is not enough. Guess what? You have to go to Amazon.com, you buy something else, and you start adding more storage to your laptop. Now, these are not sustainable. What if somebody steals your laptop? Your laptop is gone. Once the laptop is gone, these people, they won't be able to access your interesting project anymore. So that is gone. Now, a better way to solve that is by going to a cloud provider. Cloud providers are basically a group of companies. No, not group of companies. Are basically companies that sells compute resources. Compute resources is basically laptop. I mean, not laptop. It's basically an example of that is a computer, right? And if you, on the other hand, let's call this person you on the other hand, you would like to buy a server. What you need to do is you need to come over and you shop around. We have AWS, we have Google, we have Azure, we have Oracle, etc. Now, these are companies that basically sells, let's call it computer, right? Now, but in this case, the computer is not physical. You can't see it physically yourself. But guess what? They have access to it. Now, since they have access to it, this is Amazon, this is Google, and then this is Azure. We also have Oracle, etc. Now, in this case, what you're going to do is, let's assume you have a laptop, and then you decide to buy this computer and you decide to call it U computer, right? Or U compute. Now this U, you're going to use your own personal laptop to access this U computer that you bought from where? From Amazon. Let's give it a nice color coding to make it distinct. You decide to buy a laptop from to buy compute from AWS. Since you got this compute from AWS, that's the Amazon Web Service. In order for you to access this, guess what? You can use your personal computer to log in into this server. So even if somebody steals your computer, guess what? You can buy another computer, and you will access your compute resources. Okay. Now what is the trade-off? Trade-off is this your laptop, your personal laptop that you're using to host all your interesting files for James. You can easily just change it, and then James and his gang and his friends, they'll be able to access these resources here. They can access it directly, right? Now, your presence or your absence in this case is not needed. Why? Because Amazon's responsibility is to make sure that your server is up and running 24/7, 365 days. It's part of the contract, that part of the commitment that Amazon will be giving, that is AWS will be giving. Now, how can you set up your Amazon account or environment? Now, there's something called, let's log in. I'll log out from this environment. Now you see this badge here says sign in. You could also create an AWS account. Here you're going to put in your email. In this case, let's say, let me use this email. And the name, account name, I could call it Twitter. Then if I click on verify email address, a verification link will be sent over to my email. However, I won't be doing this. This is what you are going to be doing. In this case, you're going to click on, I will be clicking on sign in to an existing AWS account. The moment I click on that, I'll be able to sign in. Then I'll put in my password. Then I'm able to log in. As you can see, this is the way you set up your AWS account. Then the concept of you having your own personal computer and buying a computer from AWS, let's explore that. To explore that, what are we going to do? What we're going to do is I will be walking you explicitly through something called EC2 instance. EC2 instance is basically your server. That's it. However, there are a lot of more information about EC2 instance, but for the sake of this conversation, I'll be explaining EC2 instance. Now, in this example, I mentioned EC2, right? Google, they call it different name. Azure, they call it different names. You know, different companies, they have different terminologies when they mention or call all these resources. So in this case, this is going to be called EC2. So anytime I talk about EC2, just think of a server. Now, once you're done creating an account, if you're not seeing this recently visited, you won't be seeing this because as a new user, you'll be seeing something completely different. In that case, you should type EC2 here and you see it right here. Amazon Cloud Compute, EC2. The 2 is twice. That's why you see it, EC2. So it's a virtual server in the cloud. What is in the cloud? The cloud simply means you do not have physical access to it. A company actually owns it. I mean, they have a data center where you can access their infrastructure. Let me give you a physical representation of what I just said. So this is AWS. And then AWS have different servers. They also have different region. Let's say this is US East 1. And then this is US West 2. We'll be explaining the concept of region to you. Just give me a minute. Virginia. Ohio. Then in Virginia, AWS decided to split up their infrastructure like this. Why? Because they are trying to ensure high availability. High availability simply means a server is always available every time, 24/7, 365 days. And it has to be disaster proof. If there's a hurricane or there's an issue, there's an incident, it doesn't happen across all your servers. Okay. Okay. So let's assume you live in Virginia. Naturally, you want to get a server that is closer to this location. Now, before I dive right into the complexity of regional availability, all of those beautiful stuff, let's go back to the conversation, which is creating your very first server in the cloud. It's going to be amazing and you have nothing to worry about. Okay, back to what I was saying. Now, let's familiarize ourselves with this interface. Just before you start creating the beautiful servers in the cloud, you need to understand the environment. In this case, we've decided to choose AWS. AWS gives the ability to create servers in the cloud. Now, on the left side, you can see something called AWS, which is AWS Console Home. Here is something called Amazon Q. Amazon tends to infuse AI into their technology. This allows you to be able to have more insight about their product. For example, you have a question, you click on that, you see, help us improve Amazon Q by providing feedback, because so that they will use that feedback to improve their product. Now, if you click on that, how can I help you? Think of it as you are chatting with ChatGPT. But guess what? It is not ChatGPT. It is within Amazon Web Service itself. And who knows Amazon Web Service other than AWS? It is their product. They understand their product better. And here is basically describe what you want to do with AWS, e.g. you would like to list all S3 buckets. So this section here interact with your environment. Environment simply means your AWS account. When I say AWS, I simply means Amazon Web Service. You'll be hearing me talk about AWS over and over. Just know that AWS is a short form of Amazon Web Service. Now here it also gives you a sample of what you question you can ask as well. Now here you can also start a new conversation. You can start one conversation and add another conversation. Classic ChatGPT interface. Functionality. You can also check your conversation history. You can also check your settings. Here, when I clicked on it, it shows Amazon Q, settings, region, which is what? US West 1. If I'm in Europe, it's going to be showing a different region. Or not entirely, it's going to be showing the region I'm currently in here. Now let's move from left to right so that you understand your interface. Now this section here is a grid that allows you to have allow you to see all the Amazon services such as analytics, application integration, blockchain, business application, cloud financials, compute, containers, customer enablement, database, developer tool, end user computing, front-end web and mobile, and etc. Now, some of the services that you've recently visited, you'll be seeing them here. You can also start some of the services that you're going to be visiting frequently. Amazon has arrays of services. So it's very essential for you to be able to bookmark some of these services. And to bookmark them, you have to click on the star. If you click on the star, it's going to create a shortcut for you on the UI, and it will allow you to switch much easier into those sections. Now, let me click on this. I'll click on this, and then you see them here. As you can see, EC2, S3, DynamoDB, Key Management Service, Console. Then let me remove everything else, and I'll only keep one. You see that? Console on. Let me bring them back. Let me bring back EC2. Now, if you're seeing this double scroll, do not be alarmed. Your computer is not broken. It simply means the inner scrolling is for this section, and the external scrolling is for scrolling the entire segment. Now here also is a search bar that allows you to search across S3 AWS services. For example, S3, you get to see S3, ECR, you get to see Elastic Container Registry. Also, this is console, which is cloud shell. It allows you to have programmatic interaction with the terminal, which AWS calls cloud shell. Then you also have this bell icon, which is for notification. And you also have this question mark icon, which is for support. Now, it's very essential for you to understand that support is not added. You can actually reach out to AWS for support. However, different accounts here have different support functionality. For example, for a basic user, you won't be able to call, you won't be able to have, you don't have access to 24 hours chat. But for a developer account, you have different functionality, different support. For business use case, you have for business accounts, you have different support channel. Also for organization, you have different support channel. Now this GS section here is for the language settings, basically your user settings. If you want the light browser mode or the dark browser mode, you can configure all of that. In terms of the browser default, you can choose English UK or English US, or even Espanol or France. Now, in terms of this here, you can select which region you like to create your account, also your local zones as well. But in this case, think of this as the location where you like to set up your server. Do you want to set up your server in Virginia or Ohio? I mean, on North Virginia, Ohio, or North California, or Oregon? Or would you like to set up your server in Mumbai, Osaka, Seoul, Singapore, Sydney, Tokyo? Or would you like to set up your server in Canada, or in Europe, or in South America? Now, you might be wondering, why is it essential for you to specify your region? Now, let me take you on a journey. You have this person, let's say, for example, you live in the United States. You live in Virginia. But let's use Ohio as an example. You live in Ohio, right? And in Ohio, you have an interesting product. Let's say, what products can you say you have? You have an interesting product that users in California, they find really interesting. Let's say skateboarding. Skateboard. You have an interesting product, which is skateboard, right? However, when you launch your product, or let's say you launch your server, or let's say, for example, you're getting a lot of requests from users in California. Let's call it Cali. Now, most of these users in California, they would like to buy your product. But guess what? Your server, you are in Ohio. Naturally, you can have your website, your server, everything set up in Ohio. It's perfectly fine. However, some users might be experiencing some delays, like a lag, in terms of trying to reach out to your website. Why? Because of the distance between your site location, your server location, and your end user. Now, AWS has solved this problem. How was AWS able to solve it? They were able to solve it by creating something called regions. So which simply means you can actually spin up a server in California. If you're able to spin up this server in California, it means the server is closer to your end users. Now, think of it like this. Now, imagine the distance it takes for this user to be able to get to your website, and also that same user being able to get to your website over here. Here, it might actually take, let's say, 500 milliseconds compared to here, where it might just take 50 milliseconds. A user who is experiencing a fast access to your product will most likely want to purchase your product. And guess what? You'll be able to, the more money, the more sales you have, the more it's good for your business. So that is one of the benefits of understanding regions. let's call this Ohio region, not California region. Okay, now back to this. So that is your concept of region. Also, imagine some of your users are in Tokyo. You are most likely going to create a product, create a server in Tokyo region. The same thing applies to Europe. This is very essential, especially when it comes to GDPR. Europe tends to have their own data law. So it's very essential for you to understand the European data law. Now, companies who are in the US that want to expand to the Europe market, they don't need to travel all the way to Europe to open a physical data center. You could easily just switch to London and decide to spin up a server in London. Now imagine you traveling all the way to London just because you want to have a server. You can easily just switch to London and create your server in London. And then here is basically your name, which contains your account ID, account name, account color, account alias, IAM user, your account, organization, service quotas, billing and cost management, security credential, console, mobile app. Okay, now this caret is similar to you clicking on your name on the top right hand side corner. Now let's go ahead and create our first server. In this case, let's create it in London. To create a server in London or in any region of your choice, you search for EC2, which is your virtual server in the cloud you would like to create. Now the next thing you want to do is you click on, you can check the number of instances that are running. Click on instances to check if you have any server running. The next thing you would like to do is click on launch instances. Clicking on launch instances is going to give you the perfect avenue for you to do what? For you to specify the servers that you're creating. Now, the next thing you want to do is you will need to familiarize yourself with this UI. This UI gives you an avenue to customize the information around your server. Now, let's give our server a name. My awesome server. That will be the name. You could also add a label, a tag to your server. It's highly recommended to add labels, to add tags to your server. The reason being that you'll be able to classify the server. What kind of server is it? In this case, the name of my server is my awesome server. I would like to add another tag to it. Region, even though I don't know the region it is, but I like to know when my server are located. Here I'm going to say London. Okay, you can also add anything you want here as a key and also the value. Let's just take to name and region for now. Now, in terms of the operating system, now remember if you want to buy a server, let's assume you go to Amazon.com or you went to Best Buy. If you go to Best Buy, what are you going to do? You need to specify the type of computer you want. Do you want a Windows computer? Do you want a Mac OS computer? And do you want Linux? Most companies tend to go for Amazon Linux because it gives them the ability to perform a bunch of operations. And also it's also open source. Linux are generally open source. If you select Mac OS or you select Windows, especially Windows, you need to get a license, which is a Windows license. And I believe AWS have simplified the process of doing that by specifying an operating system you need to use. For the sake of this walkthrough video, I'll be selecting Amazon Linux. You could also browse more AMI. AMI is basically a marketplace where you can buy different operating systems. Now for the Amazon Linux image here, you can specify the type of Amazon image Linux that you want. Now the architecture, you can want 64-bit or x86 or 64-bit ARM. For the sake of today's walkthrough, it will be 64-bit x86. Now, instance type. The instance type for today is going to be T2 micro. It's very essential for you to understand the type of instance type that you want. There's also a page, Amazon cost calculator, EC2. There's also a page where you can also calculate your how much it's going to cost, or the type of instance that you need. You could also estimate all those interesting stuff. But for today, we're going to be doing T3 micro. And what is T3 micro? Think of it as you like to buy a computer. You would like to know the amount of memory that your computer needs. You would like to also add the amount of CPU that your computer needs. So this is a very good avenue for you to shop around. So instead of you going to Best Buy, going to Amazon, going to different computer store, this is basically like a one-stop shop for you to decide what kind of instance do you want. Do you want one with 2 GB of memory that also have 2 vCPU, that like virtual CPU? You can also all generations. You can also click on that. Now scrolling through this, you'll be able to see and understand what T2 Nano is, which is basically 0.5 GB of memory, 1 CPU. For T2 Micro, it has 1 GB of memory and 1 CPU. For T2 Small, it has 2 GB of memory, 1 CPU. For T2 Medium, it has 4 GB of memory, 2 CPU. And it goes on and on and on like that. And also, guess what? You could also compare instance types. And this allows you to understand, okay, these are the instance type, these are the vCPU, these are the architecture. Oh, interesting. We also have the memory here. So it allows you to also see the performance, the network performance of those resources as well. You could also filter here if you want more comparison. For example, instance family. Also, for example, you want to understand what the amount of cores that are baked into it. Or does it have GPU? Does it provide IPv6 support? So all this interesting stuff, you could also get to see them. If I click on confirm, you see now I have more information. Now this allows you to specify the kind of instance type that you need for your server. For the sake of our awesome server, we're going to be selecting T3 Micro. Select instance type. Now key pair. This is very essential. It's so essential that you need to understand what it means. You can use this key pair to securely connect to your instance, and it also ensures that you have to ensure that you have access to the selected key pair before you launch the instance. You need to have access to what you generate. Now think of it as you just create a server. You don't need any other person to just log into your computer. You need to ensure that only you can log into the server, provided that you have the key pair, the key to the server. Now, since this is your first server that we are creating in London, we're going to generate a new key pair. My first key. This is the standard one that you need to use, RSA. If you are generating or you are creating a Windows instance, you'll be selecting a .ppk, which is generally used for PuTTY. But in this case, we're not using PuTTY. We are using Amazon Linux. we're using an operating system that is other than Amazon. That's other than Windows. So we're using Amazon Linux. So we're going to be using .pem file. Let's create key pair. Then a file will be saved, which is in my first key pair. I have access to it, and then it shows up here. If it doesn't show up, click on refresh. If it doesn't show up again, just click on refresh. It's going to show up right here. Now, since this is your first Amazon AWS account, naturally you'll be using the default network. Auto sign public IP. Click on enable because you like to do that. Now, allow SSH traffic. Ideally, you shouldn't allow any traffic from anywhere. This simply means that anybody can try or attempt to log into your server. Ideally, you want to only allow network connection from you. But in this case, there's a default security group that was already created. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to select allow SSH traffic from anywhere. Now, configuration storage. Now, think of this as you are buying a computer and you need to specify the amount of storage that the computer that will be attached to the computer, right? In this case, it's going to be 8 GB. And then the root volume, you can also specify the root volume. Now, this is a new addition that Amazon introduced. We'll be getting to the file system much later, but for the sake of this tutorial, just select none. You don't need to worry about S3 for now. You don't need to worry about EFS for now. You don't need to worry about FSX for now. Just select none. Okay. Also, these are very interesting topics which I'll be covering. For now, select none. Now, for the advanced details, you can ignore this for now. These are different use cases. We're going to be covering the IAM instance profile much later. But for today, you can just skim through it. User data is going to be this optional section. Just ignore that for now. Now, on the right-hand side, you're going to see a summary of everything that you've done so far. This was the AMI that we selected. This is the instance type that was selected. The storage volume is 8 GB. And once you're satisfied with what you're seeing here, you can click on Launch Instance. Now our instance is coming up, and in few seconds, we should be good to go. I know it feels like we're already 30 minutes in. Don't worry, this is your first attempt. Naturally, you need to understand the entire environment. Now, once your instance has been initiated successfully, just click on it, and you should see something that looks like this. Now, if you mistakenly click on instance, that's fine. If you're poking around, just checking everything out, that is fine as well. Now I just click on instances. This is where you get to see the instance that are running on your AWS environment. Now you can see, let's familiarize ourselves with this interface as well. If you notice, I minimize this. The reason that was done is so that I can focus my attention on the amount of servers that I have running. To bring it back up, you click on this. To close it, you can click on it like that. Now this is instances, it says 1, right? The last time it was updated, we click on refresh, this is it. Connect is grayed out. Why? Because nothing was selected. The instance stays, nothing was selected here, so nothing's going to happen. The same thing applies here as well. Until you select something here, that is when this comes to life, as you can see. So if you are seeing everything grayed out, it's perfectly fine, it's perfectly normal. And this was what we created earlier to launch our new servers instance. Now you can also filter out all the instances that will be showing up here. If you click on running, you see all the instances that are running. If you click on stopped, you see it says no matching instances found. Let's click on running for now. You could also decide to search and filter anything here. TRT, nothing shows up. Let me type the word awesome. You see it shows up here. Now let me clear this. I've also decided to clear this out. Now the name of my instance is my awesome instance. This is an instance ID. The instance state is running. The instance type is T3 micro. The checks is if the instance is up and running. It checks everything passed. The availability zone is EU West. The public IP, the private Elastic IP, monitoring is disabled. My first key, as you can see, this is when it was launched. Okay. Now how can we connect to our server that we just created? To connect to the server, there are different ways of connecting to the server. The first one is you click on connect. And it gives you this 4 options: EC2 Instance Connect, SSM Session Manager, SSH Client, EC2 Console, Serial Console. Let's check it out one after the other. This, you can connect to the server. I doubt you'll be able to do that. Connect using a private IP or using a public IP. This is SSM Session Manager. You need to enable this functionality. SSH, you need to be able to connect. This is a typical way you're going to be connecting to your server. If you are working for an organization or you're working on a personal project, most companies require you to use SSH to connect. And I'll be walking you through how to do that. Now, to connect to your SSH, you need to search for terminal on your computer if you're using Linux or Windows. Now, we're going to be connecting. Let's click on, say, there's an instruction that says instance ID, open SSH client, locate your private key file. The key used to launch the instance is this. So remember you downloaded the key earlier, right? Now you need to find the key. The key will be saved in your download location by default. As you can see, this is the key right here. Now you need to change the key permission. AWS already provided the commands. All you can do, you can just copy and paste, or you can type it. But in this case, I will be typing it. Now let me run the command again. You can see that the permission changed. Here is only read only. Here it was read write. Now the next thing you would like to do is you'd like to connect to your instance using this IP. And I give an example. Oh, this is how you can connect to it using this example. Now let's connect. Let me just paste it here. Let me say yes. Yay. Now I'm able to connect to my very first server. So this is how you connect to your server. And then I can do anything I want. I can say echo hello world. You could do that. And then let me show you a visual representation of what just happened. Remember this analogy of U, right? Previously we have this U on my personal computer, but now what we did was we set up an AWS account and we were able to spin up a U computer. But in this case, you call it my awesome computer. And you're able to spin it up here in your AWS account. And you're also able to log in into the account. Okay. Now let's do one thing, which is we're going to create a file called interesting on this server. Then we're going to log out, and we're also going to log back in. We're going to check if this file does exist. To create a file, you use the command touch. Interesting.txt. Now let's say the file exists. Yep, this is the file right here. Okay, now let's log out. You type exit. Now you just logged out. Now let's log back in. SSH-I, my first key.pen. Okay, then let's do ls. And there you go. You have your interesting file. So that simply means even if your computer goes missing or something happened to your computer or you have a low battery, guess what? You could use a different computer to continue working on your project. Now, this is how companies tend to save money by migrating to cloud services to ensure high availability and to ensure continuous operation. So let me cancel this. Now let me walk you through the final stage, the final step, which is understanding what just happened and also making meaningful understanding of all this interesting information you're seeing below. The first thing you're seeing here is the selection of this name. You're seeing that the instance, this is ID. The ID is more like the unique identifier of the instance itself. And if you want to know more about that, you can click on the info icon. Like it tells you that the ID of your instance. Now there's something also called instance state. The instances your instances can be in any state. It can be running state, it could be in stop state, it could even be in pending or is being shut down. Or when it's even terminated, you can actually terminate it. However, if your instance is hibernated, it is in stop state, just so you know. So you can choose the refresh button to update the page in case the instance has changed. Now there's something that's also called instance type. The instance type basically determines your instance CPU capacity, the memory, and the storage. For that specification, you can actually check out some information on AWS. AWS have very detailed documentation when it comes to their services on this page here. Now, the other part that you need to understand is the public IP address, which is this. And this is the IP address that is assigned to your instance from Amazon pool of IP. So Amazon has a lot of IP pools. So when you create an instance, they assign an IP address to your instance. So just so you know, it is not associated with your account. So when you stop this instance, guess what? The IP address goes. So in the case where you have your friend James, remember James and his homies, and would you actually give, let's say you gave James your IP address, right? And James is able to access your interesting product, right, on this IP address that you gave James. The moment you stop this server and you start it back up, this IP address changes. So remember, the IP address is the IP address that was given to you by Amazon from their pool of IP addresses that they have. So if you need a persistent a public IP address allocated to that account that can be assigned to and also maybe probably removed from the instance, then you need to consider using Elastic IP address. Don't worry, I'll walk you through how to set up Elastic IP address in a situation where you need to share your IP address with James, or you need to give your IP address to family and friends, or you need to link it with a different product so it doesn't change every time. I'll walk you through how to set it up. Also, there's also a concept of public DNS. So the public DNS, we also have private DNS. The public DNS host name of the instance is basically what resolves the instance. What does that mean? What does resolve? What does it even mean? It simply means you can have access. It can respond. A service can talk to it. It can also respond back to the service. Then we also have private DNS. So think of it this way. Let me give you a very interesting visual representation around that so that you understand how that works. We have private and public. Now this is it. In terms of private simply means most of the services can talk within AWS. An example is this. So let's say we have AWS services here, right? Interesting stuff, beautiful stuff, right? And then you have your EC2 instance, right? Now in your EC2 instance, there are some cases where there's some services within AWS that need to talk to this service, right? These two services can talk to each other. So I'm going to use an arrow to denote their communication. So this can be a private IP. You could actually be communicating this way. Now, however, let's say you have James, for example. James wants to talk to this service. Guess what? James can talk to this service over the public IP address. Or let's say over the public DNS. This could also be over the public DNS as well. So the private DNS host name is assigned to the instance. The host name can only be used inside the Amazon EC2 network for communication between instances in your VPC, and it's not reachable by the internet. So the host name is not available until the instance enters the running state. So if your instance is in pending state or in stop state, guess what? If this instance is in stop state, there won't be no connection. The connection will be broken, to be severed, right? Now, and then if this instance is trying to talk to it, they're like, oh, I'm unreachable. But the moment this instance comes back up, guess what happens? The communication comes back. If it goes down, no communication. If it comes back, there's a communication. And same thing applies here too. If this instance is unreachable, guess what happened? The public the reachability gets served. Then you bring it back up. Now that is what happens when your instance is in running state. And then also we have the concept of VPC ID. I'll be explaining VPC in much later tutorial, but that is a virtual private cloud environment that your instance is running. Let me just do a quick recap, a quick introduction around that. So whenever you create an EC2 instance account, or you create an EC2 instance resources, most of the time, let's say this is Amazon, AWS. Now, Amazon AWS, they do something interesting, which is they tend to provision something called VPC, your own virtual, let me just call it your own data, virtual data center. But we don't call it virtual data center. It's called VPC, virtual private cloud. Now, in this environment here, you can do anything you want, such as you can create your own EC2, and but in this case, you want to create EC2, you want to create a proper infrastructure, such as a subnet, private subnet and public subnet. Now, this allows you to segment communication between the outside world and also between services in your company's environment. Let's say this is public and this is private, right? If somebody on the outside want to talk to your infrastructure, it's going to be usually through the settings that is related to the public. For private, it's going to be something like, let's say your servers are in that you are creating. Naturally, they want to be in the private subnet. Okay, we're going to be explaining this in details in much later tutorial, but this is the whole concept about VPC. This is basically an high-level overview, and this is very essential for the sake of security. Security is very essential when it comes to setting up your server, but today is largely around trying to spin up your first server in the cloud. Now, I already explained this subnet ID. The concept of IAM role, we're going to be touching that much later. And then the operator, the managed by force, and this auto scaling group name. Also instance details. For the instance details, you get to see the AMI, which is the AMI that you selected. Guess what? You can open this and you can check out the AMI that you actually selected. Also, the monitoring is disabled. The platform you selected was Linux. Stop protection then is disabled. And the instance reboot migration, you can see all this interesting information. Now, you need to understand that you can also check your key pair that you created when the instance was being created. In case you forget, oh, I can't remember the name of the key pair that I created. Guess what? You can see the information right here. Also, the status and alarm, you can also check the times of the metrics of your server. Is my server easy up and running? What happened to it? Is it unreachable? You can actually get all this information right here. Oh, also you can also do a look back. You can do a look back up to months, weeks, and up to 15 months duration. So, and that's very essential in some cases where, let's say your server goes down and you like to understand why did my server, when was the availability of my server? When was the last time the server went down? You can actually have that matrix show up here. You can see this 2025. Why? Because I selected 15 months. So Amazon, AWS will actually show you 15 months worth of metrics. Isn't that cool? Compared to you having your own personal laptop, how will you be able to identify the last time your server went down? Then also monitoring and security. The security section, it shows you basically all the information around inbound rules, outbound rules. These are network related section. I'll be explaining that in details. But this port 22 shows that, oh, you allow a connection from anywhere on the internet to try and log in into your server. But guess what? Nobody has a PEM file, so nobody can really log in. But that doesn't mean you should have better security. The best thing to do in this case is never allow anybody to have access or to even attempt to access your server. And how will you be able to prevent that? By removing this 0.0.0.0.0/0. That means you are giving everybody on the internet access to your environment. To fix it, you click on the security group that was attached to your server. You edit the inbound rule. You delete this. You add the rule. Then you can say, okay, you know what? I want SSH only. I want to be able to SSH into the server. And then the source, Amazon make it much easier. You can just specify your IP address. If I select my IP automatically shows up here. And then you can give it a name so that you can remember. This is my IP. Then you save it. It saves. Now, only you will be able to log into your server using your PEM file. Nobody on the internet will even attempt to even log in. Now, your outbound rules, all traffic, which means that you can talk to anybody on the open internet. A physical representation of what I just did is this. It simply means that this is you, right here. This is, let's assume this is your house, right? Your house has a router, right? Let me remove that. So this is you, and this is your AWS cloud. Now, in terms of AWS cloud, they just create it like this. So this is the cloud. You just created your awesome first server in AWS. Let me bring this forward. Now, this is you. We are going to call you you. Now, this is your first awesome server, and you would like to log in into your server. Now, what you just did is basically you just told AWS that, oh, only I should be able to log into my server. And AWS will be like, okay, what's your IP address since you want to whitelist it? Then you just give it my IP address. My IP address. Now that you specify your IP address, then only you will be able to log in into your server. Now, what was happening before? What was happening before was basically you allowed everyone, which we're going to call this 0.0.0.0. So let's see. So this is what was happening. It means anybody on the open internet will try, will attempt, these people will attempt to log in. That was also happening, and that was not good. But now that has been removed. The only person that has access to it is just you. Nobody will be able to log in. And also you have the PEM file. Now back to this. Now let's get back to our EC2. So once you're done here and you're trying to figure out how to go back, navigate back, don't worry. You can click on this toggle, click on instances, or you can click on EC2. You click on EC2, you get an overview of your AWS account. You click on instances, and you specify this here, and you're back to here. Now, in terms of security, this is what we just explained, and networking, I explained this already. In terms of the VPC, we're going to dive in details into this. And then your storage, remember when we created the instance, we specified 8 GB volume of storage. And you can also see a metrics around your storage. And then your tags, you can specify different tags for your server. We give it a name, we specify the region. You could also like, oh, I forgot to add one more tag. Don't worry. You could also come here and add your tag. Let's assume you want to specify the device. And you're like, okay, this is a Linux device. Right? You can click on save, and then you see it right here. Now, what are the things that you can do to your server? There are 3 things you can do. You can stop it, you can reboot, you can also terminate your server. once you stop your server, your instance, you'll be able to start it back up. But once you terminate, your instance is gone forever. You won't be able to recover your instance. Another thing you can also do is you can also attach it to auto scaling group. You can also change the stop protection. By doing this, it will prevent anyone from being able to stop your instance. And this is good for accidental stopping of an instance. Let's say, for example, you want to do something and you mistakenly stop your server. So this is a very good way to prevent accidental stopping of the server. And those are good interview questions, by the way. Also, change termination protection. Remember, there's a functionality here where you can actually terminate your instance. But in some cases, you would like to prevent accidental termination, because once you terminate your instance is gone forever. So you can also specify you can also protect the termination. You want to change the shutdown behavior. How can you do that? So here, if we click on change shutdown behavior, it simply means that, you don't want the behavior of the instance when you perform a shutdown. So if it is stop or if it is terminate, if you choose terminate, the instance will permanently delete when the shutdown is performed. You can't connect or recover the terminated instance. But guess what? You can actually put the instance in a stop state when you're performing a shutdown. So that way, your instance is not, you don't mistakenly or accidentally shut it down. Other things you could do is you could also decide to protect with Elastic Disaster Recovery. You could also change the instance type. So there are a lot of interesting stuff here that you can actually do. You can also change the security group. You can also create an AMI out of it, which is create image. We're going to get into that much later. You can attach a new volume, which is basically the storage. And you can do some pretty interesting stuff. Manage details, monitoring, manage CloudWatch alarm, configure your CloudWatch agent. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do, which is the end of the tutorial, is we're going to shut down our instance. And how can you shut down your instance? All you have to do is you click on this, and then you click on stop. You click on stop instance. AWS decided to add a protection around this. Now, if I click on stop, the instance is going to stop, but let's stop it. And then once we stop it, our instance will be in a stop state. And remember, I was able to log in. You see, I got kicked out. It got closed automatically because I initiated a stop. Now, even though the instance stops, I will still be able to log into the instance. But let's decide to stop the instance. And we're going to terminate the instance. Now, as you can see, the instance is in a stop state. I could decide to start the instance back up. Let me start the instance back up, and I'll be able to log in. Then once I start it back up, the next thing I will do is I will terminate the instance. And then once I terminate the instance is gone forever. Think of it as your server is gone. Your computer is gone. Like you decide to destroy a computer. You put it under a shredder, and it gets shredded and it's gone. You see it's running, and I'll be able to log into. Oh, remember what I said earlier? I was using the same IP address and the same public DNS. Now I'm unable to log in. Why? Because the IP address I was using was given to me by AWS from their pool of IP address. So now they will assign a new IP address. So you see, it just gets stuck here. Then what I need to do is I need to copy this public IP address or click on connect and then copy the new public DNS name to log in. Let me cancel this, paste it right here. As you can see, it's different. Here it is 18.132.206.161. It's different from the 35179. Then click on enter. You see I'm able to log in. Click on yes. Now I'm here. Let me type ls to save the file. Remember the file that was created before, interesting.txt file. Now I'm able to log into the server. Now let's shut it down and we're going to end the conversation today. And we'll click on terminate, which means delete instance. Always remember to terminate your instance if they are not in use. The reason being, AWS will be charging you. AWS charges per second per minute whenever you are creating, whenever you're using these resources. But for a free account or first-time users, you get to have AWS credit, so you can use it. You can create EC2 instance, and you'll be riding on AWS credit for the first few months. So after that, always remember to shut down your instance to prevent cost incurring. As you can see, the instance has been terminated. If I check my terminal here, you can see I got kicked out based on what you see here. Closed by remote host. Connection to the public DNS closed. Try to log in, nothing. Come to the UI, nothing shows up here. You see terminated. Public IP address gone. Private address gone. Everything is what? Everything is gone. The only thing that stays is the key pair information that you have. It still shows up here. Okay, thank you for today, and you just created your first server in the cloud. Wish you all the best. Bye.